I just had a few people tell me that it would be nice if Repeater World had the CTCSS codes for the repeaters, and it does. But the fact that they're telling me probably means that the UI needs some work because it was not straightforward to find them. So I made some changes. This is how it looked before the changes, before the release. When you search for repeaters, you can display it as cards or you can display it as a table. And this is how it looks. Well, how it used to look. Now, after this upgrade, this is how it looks. There are a couple of changes here. When I have the CTCSS code, I'm going to publish it here, but also there's a more details link, which goes to the same place as the title, but it makes it clear that this is not all the information that I have about a repeater. There's more information, and I'll get back to that in a moment. And now the table looks like this. So it has the more link as well, and the CTSS column where it has the CTSS code whenever I have it. Now, back to these more details that I mentioned earlier. Here's where the tone is, and it always was there. And there's actually a lot more information here that is not on the smaller cards. And even then, you are not seeing all of the information that I could have a repeater. So for example, when the repeater has D star, the fields for D star port will appear. When a repeater has DMR, the fields for DMR will appear that are color code and network. So let me quickly see if I can find one. So this one is DMR. So here you have the color code and the network. Let's see if I can find, this one has D star. Let's see if it has the port. This one doesn't have the port, so it's not showing it. Maybe it should show the fact that there's no port. But these are not all the fields that I can have about the repeater. There are even more. I'm just not showing blank fields because otherwise these would be, it would be too big. There are things like the altitude of the antenna, the azimuth of the antenna. What else is there? The UTC offset is there. There's a lot of data. And one of the things that I'm doing with Repeater World that I think is very valuable, well, I hope it's valuable. This is what I'm trying to contribute to the world, is that in a lot of other websites, when they have the data, they tend to put different values in the same field. So I have found that the CTCSS field ends up having like the DMR code or the D star port. And I wrote a lot of code and I spent a lot of time writing all of that code to separate what looks like a CTSS code, what looks like, oh, it's actually tone burst, what looks like a DMR port, and put them all in separate fields. And obviously the data needs some improvement because there's some data that was just not there, and there's some data that I actually couldn't understand what it was. But that's where I put a lot of the work up to now in Repeater World, in cleaning up all of that data. And this is not something that I'm trying to gatekeep. All of the code is open source. So if you go to the bottom of the page, here there's a link that has the statement about open source. Here's the link to the code. So for example, if you go here you have all of the code. And here in, where was it? In importers is where I have all of the importers. And just to give you an example, this one is the latest one. All of this code is the one that is cleaning up the access codes. It's finding all of the different things that were in that data that could be an access code and selecting the right one. So for example, there were a lot of typos, like it says access code 94.6 and I think it's 94.8, because one of the things that I have done with the way that I coded the database is that there are very strict validations and I do not permit invalid data to be present. So there's a limited amount of CTCS codes that are actually like can be used. And if the number is not one of those, you cannot put a different number. So in here, you will always have a CTCS code. or nothing in the case where I'm missing the data, but never a wrong one. And that means that whenever I'm importing data, I'm finding all of these errors and I need to one by one, line by line, figure out what it means and clean it up and put it in the data. Now, all of the code is open source. Anybody else can grab it and run it. Like actually somebody could grab all of repeater world and make a clone. And if at any point I stop maintaining repeater world because, you know, life happens, I hope that somebody else will take it and move it forward. In the meantime, I hope people will contribute to repeater world so that we can all together make it better. But it's not just the code, it's also the data that I want to be open. I am not gatekeeping this data. I think in the spirit of ham radio, this data should be free and accessible and easy to access. So there are some limitations on how I'm getting the data, but data that will be contributed directly to repeater world will be open for the world to use. And any of the other sites that host this type of data can actually grab my copy, which might be an improvement over their copy, and just overwrite it. And anybody can grab all of the data. There's 2 links here. One gives you a CSV and one gives you a JSON. This is for the data for all of the repeaters that are currently in repeater world, which at the moment it's about 15,000. So it takes a while, but if, for example, I click this, it takes a while to load. It will just download all of the data. So anybody can develop apps against this API and just use it. Anybody can just download a copy and keep a local copy. Hopefully, we can all cooperate and build a great ecosystem of management of repeaters together. That's my goal with Repeater World. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.